Uh, what I'm going to talk about is will tie up a lot of loose ends what's happening in the world today from a very different perspective. So I'm not going to talk about vaccines and all because, I'm not an expert there, even though I've done a lot of research. What I'm going to talk about is facial recognition is the title of the talk. Is it a digital identity or is it a digital dictatorship? So that's really the topic. And how I'm going to break down the presentation is I'll introduce what is facial recognition and how cameras are being installed all around the world to build a seemingly innocuous digital prison for everybody. So this is going to be an open air concentration camp is what is being built. From there, I'm going to introduce smart cities and how the LED lights that are being set up on smart poles around the world, how they can be used against us, and what my intuition and research have brought me to this point with the LED lights and their implications with the sensors that are attached to them. From there, we'll make a transition to the actual digital ID and how it is implemented in world use cases like shopping, accessing the internet, how you'll be moving around in the world. And it'll all tie into the smart cities and the face recognition and digital ID. And I'll have some pictures of, what Carrie was talking about of things in Montana that I've been capturing. And I'd say it's less pernicious than what I've seen pictures coming from Canada and Australia. I think the smart cities there are much further ahead than in America, but it's happening fairly quickly here. And then we can discuss, what we can do in local communities and neighborhoods and, in terms of solutions. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation, if that's cool.
Yes, I'm excited. So please start.
So Aman, you're welcome to share your screen. I just switched you to co-host.
Yeah, I am sharing it now.
Awesome.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so facial recognition, is it a digital identity or is it going to transition into a digital dictatorship? So most of us have, smartphones and, oh, sorry, this is my background, which I'm just going to skip since it's been introduced already. This wasn't meant to be here. So how does facial recognition work? Like if you have an iPhone, for instance, right, you pick up your iPhone and it gets unlocked. And what's really happening is there's a 3D camera inside the front of your iPhone, and that projects a pattern of 30,000 dots or 60,000 dots, probably in the new ones, on your face. And depending on the contours and the depth of your face, that pattern gets distorted. And there's an invisible light or infrared camera in there which takes a picture of that face. And then it's able to decode the exact contours of the face and kind of builds symbolically an equation inside, which is a unique identity for you. And that's how iPhones are, unlocked. And it's sold to us because it's very beneficial, right? It's very quick and it has safety and security. And just like most technologies that are sold to us over the last 2-3 decades, they sell it as the carrots, right? It's for convenience, it's for security and safety, and it's to catch terrorists and bad guys, to catch child molesters and thieves, etc. So we are given cameras and they install cameras and we buy this stuff, and we are okay with it as a society at large. But by the end of the presentation, you'll see how the sticks are coming by using these specific technologies, right? So many documentaries have been coming out over the last few years about how, oppressive China has become, where Big Brother has met big data. And face recognition in China is used to control the behavior of people through a social credit system, right? I was in Shenzhen, China for an optical conference in September 2019. And the number of cameras at every intersection, outside buildings, inside restaurants, it's just amazing. So here's an example of this intersection. It has lane detection cameras. It has facial recognition cameras. It has license plate readers. Anywhere you go, there are TV screens that are doing face recognition, gait recognition, and they are identifying you, they are scoring you, and they even have an app where they tell you what your social score is. So this way the app combined with the artificial intelligence algorithm, they are able to control the behavior. And it has become a very compliant society, China. And this is what is happening in America already, even though they haven't given us an app. So what's happening in the narrative from all these documentaries and little snippets they have on TV and news is that China is gone, right? And we in the West are free. There's no privacy and freedom, and we in the West are implicitly free. And there's a social credit system to control people, which is true. What they have not said is that cameras per capita today in the US, as of February 2022, is more than in China. We have 50 million cameras installed, connected to the internet, tethered to the internet, and installed compared to 200 million in China, but our population ratio is much different, right? London has 73 cameras per 1,000 people. So London's way ahead as a digital prison. And so the infrastructure is in place, it's expanding by the day. And by 2025, $2 trillion would have been spent on the surveillance infrastructure for smart cities. And the number is going to be 6.9, almost $7 trillion by 2030. That's where the money is going. And so while they're diluting the dollar, they are installing the infrastructure with printed dollars. So what I call it is when the world was sleeping and COVID was, announced, the lockdowns began all over the world, quarantines were in place. And while everyone was, watching Fear TV, they were installing cameras and smart city infrastructure. By the end of 2022, there'll be 1 billion surveillance cameras in the world. And these are not just surveillance cameras, they're worse than that. They are data collection cameras about everything about every person. And if you count cameras which are not tethered on smart cities infrastructure and include your cell phones and all, there are more than 20 billion data collection cameras that are watching us every day. So that's the kind of system that's already in place and expanding. So in the old days, surveillance was done with people looking at TV screens. And so human eyeballs were used, but that doesn't happen much more anymore. What we have is essentially artificial intelligence security guards, right? Smart cameras. And so no humans are necessary. And all the intelligence is distributed between the edge of the camera and the cloud. So know that whenever you're in front of these cameras, all the key data is being collected and you're being analyzed. And you're being analyzed, you're being logged, they're listening, and then they are learning, and then they're scoring. So that's how it works. So when are we not alone? Pretty much never. Anywhere you go, there are cameras looking at you, even inside your car and stuff. And here's a picture of a panopticon. A panopticon is a circular prison. And this is from late 1920s in Rhode Island, in the East Coast, where you have the prison guards are in the center, and you have all these prison cells around. And so no prisoner is left alone in a sense, right? They can be watched from anywhere inside this. And so we are in a digital panopticon, where artificial intelligence, along with computer vision and cameras, have locked us symbolically and practically inside a prison cell. And we are being watched with everything we do. So here's a picture of, a teenage girl who was asked to make her interpretation of a panopticon with the eye in the center. So she pretty much hit the nail on the head. So we are being monitored everywhere and all the time. And there's about 5 or 6 years ago, I started hearing in the venture capital world this term called the Internet of Eyes. And I was kind of scratching my head, why would they even bring that up? But today, everything is clear. We have cameras on streets, we have cameras in automobiles. High-end cars have 8 to 16 cameras inside and outside combined. By 2025, most cars will have between 16 and 24 cameras. You have face recognition cameras on streets. We have satellite cameras watching us. We have drones, license plate readers, face recognition cameras inside automobiles, cameras in railway stations, airports, etc. Right? Even at home, by using devices from companies like these, we are helping Big Brother. We are on a Zoom call. All the key information is being recorded by Zoom and going to servers in China. Right, so far I talked about facial recognition and the whole camera setup and the camera architecture. Here is a picture of these smart lights and smart poles that have flooded our beautiful dark skies all over Montana, and I bet all over the world. I live in a place, which is in Northwest Montana, not many people, and we're seeing lights go up on freeways like crazy around here. Why do we need that? Right? And these are key node points for smart cities. And initially, the way they're selling it is that we're going to have these smart poles, and you can add on, all sorts of interesting sensors for safety, security, and convenience. But in reality, they're going to be surveillance devices. There's going to have radar. They're going to have face recognition cameras. They're going to have loudspeakers for instruction, just like in China. They'll have LED screens for instructions. Many of these charging stations, smart poles and smart lights have seen specifications where the top of these lights are drone charging stations. So when drones are flying around as aerial police vehicles and they're running out of charge, they can go and sit on the pole and have a fast charge and then continue their surveillance. And these drones are going to have LiDARs as well as cameras on them. So this is the kind of surveillance that is being set up as we speak. So everyone should be observant on what's coming up in your towns and cities and even villages around here. So I started to dig further into these LED lights because I worked on 3D cameras, which uses either LEDs or lasers to project light onto your face. But they use diffusers. There's a diffuser which kind of diffuses the light, and as a result of which it doesn't cause any harm. A lot of the street lights I'm seeing right now, they don't have diffusers. So it's blue light in the 450 to 480 nanometers. I don't want to get too technical, but it's really not good for human or health or even plant health or animal health. So I started to dig a little deeper, and before I show something else, I was driving through this little town called Pablo, Montana, and I've gone there about 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years that I've been here. And it's population 2,000. There used to be no street lights, and now if you go there, there are over 100 street lights on the freeway corridor. Now think about it. They're selling LED lights for energy reduction, for global warming and climate change benefits, right? Energy conservation. They had 0 lights earlier. Now they have hundreds of lights. Just think about that. And so it's really, it's really horrible what's happening to our towns and cities and our freeways. It's an open air digital prison. And I got this picture on the right from somebody in Canada. I think it was in Alberta. And they have these new types of lights, which I have not seen in Montana yet. And these I dug into, these are LED incapacitators. And this is Department of Homeland Security had funded a company back in 2007. They're also known as puke rays, where you can project, different frequencies of light and interchange them really, really quickly. And the way they go about what they do is they cause intracranial pressure, and they can also cause sickness. They can eventually cause death, I'm sure, spinal damage, and all sorts of problems that Carrie as a doctor would know even better than I do. But these are the kinds of technologies and weapon systems that are being installed all over the world, and they do it slowly and they do it at night and people get used to it. So we talked about smart city lights, the sensors on smart poles. How does this all connect? So there's this concept called digital identity that I came across a while ago, and this is a diagram from a 2018 World Economic Forum paper that I was reading. And the digital identity is all about entities, people, devices, and things. Everything has to have an entity, a digital entity, right? And what is this all about? And what happens? This digital identity will be used to access your healthcare, your benefits, telecommunications, internet login, when you want to buy food, when you want to log into social platforms. So anything you want to do in life, they want you to certify it with a digital identity. And how is that going to happen? Through your face. So your face will be the key to unlocking life with your digital identity. But how are they going to use this to enslave humanity? Because it's going to be linked to a new type of currency. And that currency is going to be given UBI, which is universal basic income. So everybody is going to get carbon credits effectively. You're going to have a social score, your compliance and behavior. And they may also have your, jab status. And so this is a perfect way for this AI system to control people and make them comply on whatever it wants to be done. And this kind of new system is going to be, it's already there in so many countries are rolling it out, central banking digital currency, right? And so Ukraine was the first country, I think, that unrolled the digital ID while they had all this, Russia-Ukraine warmongering going on TV back in April. What was happening was they were unrolling the digital ID in Ukraine. So it's already done. And they also have an app. So the digital ID, the World Economic Forum says it's a new chapter in the social contract, a contract that none of us have accepted or signed up for. So this is the most important, piece of information here, which will tie everything up, as you keep seeing. Right. So the digital identity is really your digital prison. It's nothing to do with your true identity. And how are they going to implement this? There's a concept called zero trust, or you might see ZTNA, zero trust network access. So in cybersecurity land, with companies who are in cybersecurity and servers and software, they're implementing zero trust for networks and for IoT sensors and all devices. So what is going to change is implicit allow to default deny. So think of yourself when you go to the internet and you log in. Once you log into your computer, you generally can access most of your applications without further permission, because that is implicit allow. What's going to happen is zero trust will become default deny. That means we don't trust you. And for everything you want to do, you have to prove that you are you, and you have to have your credit scores valid. So how are they going to do this? Through your digital ID and face recognition. And so even when you're online, anytime you want to go to a new application, it's authenticating you. So the camera is going to be on all your devices all the time, and AI is always looking at your face, tracking your eye movements. And the next version of zero trust is going to be looking at all the data that you're inputting or outputting. There's going to be no privacy left in any communications. So this is what the world's going to look like with the digital ID and zero trust. Your life will be a bunch of locks, and all day long, from the moment you wake up to the time you sleep, you'll be unlocking with your face. And this is how it's going to be implemented. How are we going to go shopping in zero trust? So here's a picture of Walgreens somewhere in the US, where they have these lighted screen doors. So all the contents of the food and the bottles and all the shopping is behind these doors. And with the Face ID, your digital ID, which is conditional access, you may be able to unlock these doors. There's going to be a face recognition camera on top of these doors. And if this woman's carbon credits have not expired, or if they have expired and she's already had too much beef for the month, the door won't open. If she's had too much sugar, then the orange juice door won't open. So that's how this is going to be implemented. And it's going to be through the central banking digital currency, which is smart contracts, right? And IDaaS is a concept where it is identity as a service. So a lot of companies are being set up who are doing identity as a service. And so they're making money in real time 24/7 by looking at faces. So each time your face is in front of a camera, a chain of corporations are making money in real time all the time. What else will these the smart cities and digital ID be used for? It'll be used for access control. So geofencing is basically, think of it as an invisible fence around people or or robots beyond which you cannot go. So they are going to geofence the world. So how far you can fly and where you can fly will depend on your digital identity, right? How far you can drive, how far you can walk, who you can communicate with, what you can communicate, what music you can listen to, who you can speak with. So everything has the potential to get geofenced, and it will. I mean, it's already started. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, they lock you out. Your information may not be shown to, like, let's say you have 1,000 followers, maybe only 200 are seeing your information. That is a geofencing in the metaverse, right? So basically, the digital ID is being sold for security and privacy. And inside this Trojan horse is actually the digital ID, right? And face recognition is going to be all about total control and compliance. So this is very important to understand. And how is this going to be used in schools? It's very like, so if people have kids or grandkids in this, who are watching, they have come for the kids through social and emotional learning. And they've sold it to schools as something that's good for the kids. And it's going to be from cradle to career, they're going to own the kids. So here's an example of how cameras are going to be used with AI for algorithm screening for child abuse. So with all the cameras in schools and at home, they're always monitoring kids' faces, and the artificial intelligence algorithms can decide whether child abuse is happening. And if it decides yes, then the child protective custody services can come for the kids, and they will, right? Here's a device called a talk pedometer, where parents, this is a device that's already in the market. When parents are talking, their voices are being recorded, it's going to the cloud, AI is listening, and depending on what the parents are teaching the kids, the parents' scores can be up or down, right? So this is a way to control what kids are being taught. Here's a We Play Smart LED board. It has fisheye cameras in them. And what is displayed on the board in the games can be manipulated by AI in order to change what the kids see and their behavior. At the heart of all this is cameras, facial recognition, and the digital ID, right? SEL is also used in securitized futures markets. So there's a concept called Human Capital Index in the World Economic Forum. And they are finding ways to not only manipulate behavior and control behavior for humans, but also make money of humans in real time. And this is how they're going to do it, right? By controlling the minds of kids. So one of the things is, if you take, let's say you take SEL scores from top performers in Northwest Montana, right? And you combine them with their predictive pathways. They have already started building what they call prodigy asset groups, similar to they had securitized mortgage futures back in 2006, 2007, and the market crashed in 2008. So now they are playing with human beings. And depending on the results, they can make more money. So SEL is nothing to do with learning. It has everything to do with control and management. And so parents and grandparents should really understand what they are doing if they're sending kids to schools these days. They're being manipulated completely. And then in second half of April, again, the same stakeholders from the World Economic Forum, they announced that now the global internet is a multi-stakeholder internet. So basically they've taken over the internet. This was announced also on the Department of State. And so we are going to live in a zero trust world going forward. And it's very possible. And in fact, I'm pretty sure if you connect the dots, if you don't take your jabs, you won't have access to communications in the future, because your digital ID won't unlock your internet access, right? And it's all related to the cameras and face recognition. And so here in Montana, just like you can change Montana to Atlanta, Georgia, Florida, wherever you want. Cameras have been installed everywhere. Facial recognition is coming, and it's going to result in a loss of freedom, right? Traffic intersections, cameras are coming up every week. They're all over retail, in hospitals and more places. Smart city lights are being installed at intersections, freeways, roadways, in cities and towns. There's a study on facial recognition in the state of Montana that I have been working with the Montana state legislators locally with, trying to make them understand that it's really a red herring, because the conversation about banning facial recognition in Montana or anywhere else is meaningless, because facial recognition is not going to be done by state and local governments 99.9% of the time. It's going to be done by private companies on Google servers and Amazon servers, etc. And they have no control over that. So the only way to deal with this issue is to deal with the smart city infrastructure, right? And so in Flathead Valley is the area where I live. I recommend everyone keep looking up, and you'll see cameras everywhere. We have cameras on the ski mountains hidden in fake trees. So it's pretty bad, right? In the retail stores here, there's cameras everywhere. There are face recognition cameras when you enter foyers of shops like Walmart. They have cameras in the parking lots. LED lights are coming and been turned on in the parking lots during the daytime, and it just goes on and on. So whether you're in a private space or a public space, you're being watched all the time, and it's recording, and it's all related to the digital ID. There's a company called Clearview AI. The investor is Peter Thiel, was one of the original investors. He's also a big investor and founder of Palantir, originally PayPal. And so he's been funding a lot of, pre-crime kind of companies, and they are collecting tens of billions with the target of 100 billion facial images in the next 2 years. And so they already rolled out programs in Santa Clara County, California, and in New Orleans, and spreading more on doing this pre-crime, just like they had in this company, a movie called Minority Report. So this will be used for stakeholders, right? There's other companies which are touted as public-private partnerships. So these are basically private companies in the name of PPP. And they are pushing no identity left behind it, and it's for diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Buzzwords that I think most people should be familiar with by now. But what they are trying to push is video selfies combined with your driver's license and password for benefits with states. So whether you have employment benefits or medical benefits. And this is how they're going to suck up retirees and unemployed people into the digital ID system. Because once you're in the digital ID system, you will be refused a lot of things in the world, right? So everyone should understand that once we accept a digital identity as a society or as an individual, it's game over for humanity. So we must resist this. There's a person called Yuval Harari. He's a spokesperson and an author for the World Economic Forum. And I think about a year or two ago, he was giving a talk at the Davos Forum where he had this equation on his presentation, B times C times D equals R, where B is biological knowledge, C is the compute power in the cloud, and D is the data they're collecting on humans. And this gives them the ability to hack humans. Right? So how are they collecting biological knowledge? Through your smartwatches, through gait recognition in cameras, through, doing blood tests, your DNA tests, and just all sorts of things, right? So what they're doing is trying to censorize everything. There's a saying in business, if you can measure it, you can improve it. Or if it can't be measured, it can't be improved. And so since the World Economic Forum and the United Nations is so desiring of helping humanity, and I'm being sarcastic, of course, they want to censorize everything to improve us, right? So compute power, we have no control over because unlimited money is being printed for the corporations to build servers in the cloud. What we have control over is the data and the biological data we are giving the AI. So the less we give the AI, the less ability they will have to hack humans. This is an important equation to keep in your head. So in summary, artificial intelligence is really the beast. The beast needs food, and the food is data. And the cameras, smart city infrastructure, your cell phones, 5G infrastructure, your automobiles, etc., they are the data conduit. So the only way to starve the beast is to get rid of the data conduit. We cannot get rid of the data itself, really, because we as humans will continue our activities and generate data. But we have to try to prevent that data getting to AI, and that's through the smart city infrastructure. So it's really important to understand how dangerous the smart city infrastructure is. It's really a digital prison or digital gulag that they are creating. So in summary, cameras and facial recognition, which are sold to us in the name of security and privacy, will result in a digital identity, which will be linked to a central banking new type of financial system. And once we accept this as a civilization, this will be the final lockdown for humanity. Right? So the call to action, which I try and bring up locally, where I give lots of talks locally to pachyderm groups and liberty coalitions in Northwest Montana, right? That we have to resist face recognition cameras as well as the digital ID. People need to look up, observe 5G infrastructure, smart lights, cameras. They're being installed every week and they're getting more and more. They do it incrementally, they do it at night. I've also started putting out flyers, and people are, going around and sticking flyers all over the place. And if anyone needs help, I can share my flyer with them. You can change the pictures to your local pictures and, just start throwing them everywhere. Parents should be taking action in schools and board meetings. The cameras are everywhere, in parking lots, in hallways, their laptops, their iPads, they're being looked at all the time. And the question everyone should ask is who installed all this, who authorized it, and who funded this, right? I have the answers, but I think all your local authorities in Georgia and Florida, everywhere else, need to ask these questions of all the authorities and make them squirm. Ask them where we are on the smart city plan, right? So, but my take is if we get together as large groups and we let the authorities know that we did not ask for these monstrosities and we don't want them, what can they do? They need to step down or they need to take this stuff down, and that's my stance here. Because once these LED lights and the full infrastructure is going to be switched on, no number of guns and AR-15s and AR-10s will be able to shoot them down. I've looked at specifications where a lot of these LED lights coupled with radars that they're also installing on, they can detect human beings with a gun 150 meters away, and in a matter of milliseconds, they can take out that person.
Okay.
Wow. I've seen specs where some of these lights can be beamed as far as like 3 to 5 miles away.
What?
And I'm trying to work on a separate presentation on the smart cities and smart lights. There's a lot of information, but they are very cleverly censoring a lot of information. So in conclusion, what we have is silent weapons that are being pointed at all of humanity, being set up as a digital gulag. And if we don't stop this, we are done as a civilization. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, Aman, that's an amazing presentation, and I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. I think that every single person needs to hear what you have to say, and we have to understand what is happening first. Knowledge is power, because people get stuck and they're frozen in fear, and I'm like, well, first, just take a step back. You're supposed to learn first. Knowledge is power. Yeah. And then, the next step is educating others. Of course, going to the sheriffs, going to the mayors, telling people what these are. And I absolutely believe, just like you do, that groups of us can make large amounts of change. And I know we were talking on the phone earlier how, we were talking and you're like, yeah, I know the issues with the COVID shots and we're talking about bioweapons and you said you had this feeling that, the technologies they're saying they're using in these shots, well, you didn't think they were as threatening as this, the facial recognition, using the
Right.
incapacitor arrays. And I actually believe I'm on your side, and I'm the one always talking about the ingredients of the shots. I'm the one talking about transhumanism. I do believe that their technology is not refined yet to go where they would like to go. That this technology, though, is easily done to produce the digital cage. And someone asked a question about the incapacitator rays, the puke rays. How easy is that? If they see a facial recognition, and of course, I'm not going to be on their good list. I'm not going to, what am I driving into the airport? Atlanta airport is flooded with these LED purple blue lights.
Yeah.
They're going to see me, and I'm not the good human, so I don't get to go on a plane. And if I try to get on my car and I'm ignoring the verbal warnings, then this color frequency can go out, and within a second or less, the intracranial.
I mean, it's at the speed of, think of it as the speed of light, right? This is light.
I won't even be able to know what happened to
Right.
me. I would just be incapacitated, vomiting on myself, on the ground.
Yeah, and then the information. No, so let's back up. Once the cars, their goal is to get rid of internal combustion engine cars by 2035. There'll be no more manufacturing of internal combustion cars after 2035. And if you've read about net zero, that's 2050 is the plan for net zero. This is that carbon footprint, right? So by my guess is between 2040 and 2050, all cars will be autonomous driving cars.
Mm-hmm. Oh, please tell.
And there will be no ownership of cars. So whenever you need to go somewhere, you will have to call a car through, not an app, because apps won't even exist, because the 5G and 6G infrastructure, your face in front of a camera is effectively your app.
Really?
Right? But the thing is that if you haven't had your jab, or you haven't been compliant, or your carbon credits have already expired for the month, the car won't even come.
So
you're geofenced sitting at home.
Yeah, and explain about the lights in the cars, how they can communicate, like the LED lights. Remember?
Yes, it's a little more complex, because I have seen architectures in autonomous driving where cars are not only communicating to the cloud, but with intra-car communication can happen through blockchains. And then there's another technology called Li-Fi. Just like Wi-Fi is wireless fidelity, Li-Fi is light fidelity. So LED light arrays, they can transmit and receive data, ones and zeros at the speed of light. So it's not inconceivable that in the future, there will be communication between devices and LED arrays, or between multiple LED arrays.
Oh. And also, you said these lights that are going up, they have their own intranet. They communicate with each other as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. All the smart poles are essentially nodes in this whole surveillance infrastructure. They're all wirelessly connected. They can communicate to each other and to the macro cells of 5G that are within, striking distance. So you have these lights, you have micro cells, you have femto cells, and you have the macro cells. So they're all part of a bigger 5G network.
Yeah. And then also some of these light poles, they are able to have docking mechanisms for drones as well.
For drones, yeah. There are specs out there. Companies are selling docking lights, which are docking stations for autonomous drones.
And one thing I wanted to bring up too is the optogenics. For instance, in our iPhones or through the TV screens, right? And I know some people in the movie industry telling me that every 6, slides or 6, what are they called? Frames. There'd be some like image or an impulse, even an auditory put through, and they knew what those were for. The people in the industry, it was to influence you to do something, behavior modification. And of course, we on our iPhones, they have if they have that infrared. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that with the lights that
No,
come?
they have an infrared projector in the 3D camera for face recognition, for your face identity.
Okay, all right.
So basically that projector is comes on, I guess, intermittently, because even if you're watching a movie or your YouTube, your screen doesn't turn off. That means something is looking at you, that
Yeah.
your eyelids are focused on the camera. Now, if you try watching YouTube and taking your phone away, or watching a photograph and take your eyes away, it'll turn off,
Yeah.
most likely. I also worked in the video gaming industry. We were doing chips for video games back in the late 90s. And so if people think that video games are all about entertainment for young adults and kids, think deeper than that, because it's also training the AI. And so AI has been learning gesture recognition of people, eye tracking, how people react in both violent and non-violent games, with guns, with sports things. So AI has been learning for over 2 decades. So stop the video games, guys, with your kids especially. And before your prayer, I say, tyranny is evil, but accepting tyranny is even more evil.